All right. So welcome to the Creators Culture. This is a little round table of some creatives. I'm just going to ask a couple questions. So if you could just go around the table real quick, introduce yourself, tell us what you do a little bit, and then in the bio at the end of this video, we'll make sure that people can get connected with you guys. So,
all right, my name's Adam, and I am a hip-hop artist. And what else do you want to...
Where are you from, man?
Oh, okay. Los Angeles, California, Southgate,
Yeah.
Long Beach. So that's the city that I love right now, and we're doing
Cool. What about you, man?
What's up? My name is Mike, the Mike. I'm light-skinned. I'm from Southgate, and I'm a warrior for the truth, yeah.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, my name is Angie Rose. I'm from the Bronx, and I'm just a Puerto Rican chick that loves Jesus and hip-hop.
Cool.
My name is JR. I don't know whether to say JR or Zombie. That's my artist name. And I'm just, I'm just a creative artist. And I'm from Southgate, but I live currently in Long Beach. And I'm just here to do what I'm meant to do.
Yeah, a lot of Southgate, Long Beach representing in the house today. So, but my family's originally from the Bronx, so I'll take that. I like that.
I knew I liked
Originally from the Bronx, so
I got family in New York too. So.
yeah, we a couple generations in Long Beach. So, what I wanted to do was just talk to you guys a little bit, just about your heart for hip hop culture. You guys are all connected, do stuff together, and you know, I think sometimes there's like this idea that like Christian hip hop is cheesy and corny, and that there's not really anything quality out there. You know, a lot of the kids that I talk to at schools, you know, Creators Culture, if you've been following us and getting connected with us, you see me, you know, at schools talking with kids, and we did an interview, and at one of the interviews the kids were saying like, man, there's no good Christian artists out there, like nobody's doing anything good, and they obviously haven't heard of dudes like Lecrae and what those guys are doing, but there's a lot of local stuff that's going on that's dope, and a lot of people just don't know about it. And so just maybe you can give us a little bit, just a little snapshot of like what's out there, what you guys are doing, what your heart is for why you fell in love with hip hop, like why you are hip hop and you're not just somebody fronting trying to make a little bit of money on the side doing something. You know, talk to us a little bit. Let us know, you know, what's going on with you guys.
All right. Well, I know for me, I kind of first time I ever heard about Christian hip hop was like 9th grade, and I remember I liked it. I started listening to it, but I remember there was a moment where I had no desire to really hear it. You know, I really loved hip hop. I fell in love with it, you know, at a young age, and you know, I was into West Coast hip hop. You know, so you know, NWA, you know, DJ Quick, you know, Eminem. You know, he's on West Coast, but you know, the whole that was kind of what I was listening to and what I was loving. But for me, what I feel like what we're kind of doing as far as, you know, up and coming Christian hip hop artists, I feel, you know, for me personally, I think a lot's changing when it comes to Christian hip hop. And first of all, quality of the music is number one. I think when kids or anybody hears it, that's the first thing that they care about is, you know, is it up to par? Is the beat, you know, right? You know, lyrically, everything, you know, you have to be able to kind of, you know, I think at the end of the day, I think that's why Christian artists hip hop artists don't like to be labeled that, because at the end of the day, we need to be up to par with hip hop that's today, you know, not just Christian hip hop in that own, you know, world. So for me, it's just, you know, my passion to kind of like reach out to those that love hip hop, you know, and coming from my background and why, you know, being a Christian and being a believer in Jesus, giving them that in there, but ultimately giving them the quality that they are longing for when it comes to their music.
That's good.
That's what's up. For me, it's a little bit everywhere. First hip hop artist I was introduced to was, grew up in foster care, so I grew up in a lot of different homes. My first home was a Caucasian family. So my first hip hop artist I was introduced to was Will Smith. Will Smith, Wild Wild West, that Will Smith. And that was kind of like, it's embarrassing, but it is what it is. I grew up on that, so, and I wasn't even listening to hip hop back then. It was more NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, all that. Like, just keep it real. So after that, I really started getting into Christian hip hop when I heard Tripoli. It was just when 116 started, you know, coming out, and nobody really knew about them or nothing like that. Tripoli's first album, If They Only Knew, was the thing that really got me in it. Then I grew up on dudes like 2-5, The Hood Reverend, Slingshot, guys from Midwest, and Ray King. Those are guys that really influenced me to rap and get into the music. And I've just watched it big transition from the cross movement type of generation that was there to Reach Records, and now we're in a place where it's more. I like it because people are more vulnerable. We're not trying to put up this this cape or this window or door to people. Like I've seen walls fall.
That's good.
You know, people really let their hearts down and really telling their stories, and that's what I'm in it for. Because where I came from, I came from a lot of different places. So I'm in hip hop and I do music to tell a story, to be the voice, to be other people's voice, to be God's voice, and that's all I really.
That's
trying
it.
to do. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, for me, it was kind of on accident. My parents were actually pastors. So, like, they started their church the week I was born. And then my brother was, like, a drug dealer and, like, a gun dealer. So, had, like, my parents were, like, in their room, and my brother was in his room. And I think just walking through my house, I had two worlds, like, coexisting. And so, naturally, like, they just kind of formed this, like, person in me that genuinely loved hip hop. Like I loved the culture of hip hop. Like he used to have his friends in the room, and they would they had a mic in the room and like a stool, and they'd just throw up a camcorder and rap. And I was like 5 years old, and I'd just walk in and be like, oh shoot, and like jump around. And they used to call me Hurricane Angela. Like it was like I thought I was the coolest 5-year-old in the world. So just it became like it was. I didn't know that it was something different. Like that just was my paradigm. My paradigm was hip hop and Jesus.
Right.
And so why I do music now is just because it's something that came naturally. I didn't know that I was a good rapper. I didn't know that I was like, I didn't know any of it. I didn't know that melodies or anything was something outside of the norm. It was just something that I kind of did. In church, we played piano, and then I played piano and I played the drums, and then I'd come home and I'd like watch my brother write and sit underneath him and try to be like him. So yeah, as it came up, I just kind of fell in love with it. I strayed for a while from church for about 3 years, and what I saw was that I kept getting attention for rapping either way.
Yeah.
But I noticed that I couldn't pursue it without the right content. So I had to throw it to the side. And when I came back to Christ, since he never left, things just happened. Like everything really fell into line. It pursued me. And so, yeah, I do it because I really, really love it, and I love God. So it works out.
Yeah. What about you, Jimmy?
Well, I'm not a rapper. I just involved with the culture because I like it. I mean, I grew up in a home that I think music was always just a part of it. My parents used to pop lock and stuff back in the day, so I was exposed to like old school stuff like Africa Mabata and all that type of thing.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was I grew up with Christian music instead of regular music because my parents were kind of strict in the beginning. So I was exposed to like Cross Movement, Corey Red, Precise, all these cool guys. And the funny thing is they were all from the East Coast, and I just eventually somehow it got into our household, and they were really dope. But then as I grew older, I just expanded, listening to different things. Point of views changed, and I've never been into really mainstream music. It was more underground music, thankfully, because my uncle. But I'm in the culture just because I like visuals. And I like I like working with artists and creating their visuals for their music. And one thing, unfortunately, I'm not gonna even just point out like CHH. I'm anywhere. There's a lot of cheesy visuals out there that just
that's right.
It doesn't look eye-catching whatsoever. So I'm just fortunate being able to work with different people like you guys and other artists that find my artwork good. Sometimes I think it's decent, but everybody likes it, and it's cool being able to be part of that environment. And and then my brother just got here, and now I'm being involved with him and pushing him as far as a producer and being able to work with different artists, especially like Angie and even these guys too. So
it's dope. Yeah, man. I as a youth pastor, I didn't grow up in the church. I grew up in a gang family. My dad was St. Tree, shot and killed when I was young. I banged growing up, and I'm from Long Beach. I'm 4th generation Long Beach, and so I didn't grow up in the church. And one of the things I felt like was like I felt like everybody told me from day one that hip hop didn't belong in the church, whichever side it was on. It was either the church or it was the world, and both were telling me that hip hop didn't belong in the church. So I felt like it was hard for me to come to Christ because it was giving up the culture I grew up in. Like for me, hip hop was not a music style; it was my culture. It was what I did. It was how I grew up. It was what you did in the hallway. It was what you did at the skate park. It was who you were, right? It was how you dressed. It was visual. It was all these things. And so for me to give that up felt like, man, to say I was a Christian means like I got to get rid of all of this. And now there's guys like Lecrae that are out there saying like, I'm not a Christian artist, you know, I'm a Christian that's an artist, right? And I love that. And so like even guys in our church, like we have a dude from Priesthood, you know, one of the first West Coast rap groups that really was killing it, getting Dove Awards, doing things like that. I remember him telling me like, man, you don't have to leave behind your testimony. That's all that God was building in you, and the culture of hip hop is what God has been building in you to affect the kingdom. And so I would wonder from you guys, like, do you feel like you get that on both sides? Like, do you feel like you get from the world, like, man, you're a little too churchy for me? And then for the church, do you feel like people are like, oh, you're a little too worldly for me? You feel misunderstood in that a lot? Like, how do you bridge that gap?
I think honestly, the world, when it comes to, especially if we're talking about the hip hop world, I think they're open to it if you're kind of like giving that genuineness in your music. There's a lot of, and also honestly to me, I feel like, because this is where I've always had an issue with, at least how I've tried to approach my music, is it really depends on who is your audience. Like as far as like, who are the people you're trying to reach with your music? Who are you, you know, when you create music, there's like, these are the people that like are gonna love this, or you know, they're gonna listen to this, and sometimes, you know, some people might not connect with it. And for me, it's just like I always try to approach it with, I want to be able to connect with that kid who may or may not know God, may or may not have ever stepped into a church. So sometimes that does mean that we have to be as vulnerable as possible, you know, you know, hitting topics or saying things about our life that, you know, is hard maybe for us to say, but people respect that. I mean, you listen to hip hop, the most songs that we like usually are the ones that are explicit, but not necessarily with the language, but also with the topics, like people willing to share their life.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, and I think as Christian hip hop, especially when it kind of started, I think it was all about coming from the lens of, let me talk about the church, or let me talk about what I'm learning in youth group, which isn't bad. But I think we have to also have a mindset of like, Jesus talks about making disciples and connecting with those that, you know, don't know him. So how do we do that? You know, and for me, that's always been my mindset. How do I do that? You know, as a hip hop artist.
Yeah. I feel like in Corinthians, Paul talks about two different kinds of people: those who sow the seeds and then those who water. You know, I feel like in Christian hip hop, there was always the person who watered, which was the people who were rapping to Christians, you know, and they just, you know, wanted to give a scripture and doctrine and theology and all that. And then there was a small sector that were the people that sowed the seeds that would have to go out and bring them in. And I feel like I totally agree with Adam. Like, for me, it was all about transparency and telling my story. You know, that's something that my boy Crush taught me when I was young, because I grew up on the 116, Trip Lee, Lecrae, and that was a heavy influence on how I spit. He told me just be real, keep it honest with your story. The pornography addiction, the growing up in foster care, you know, the lust that you deal with, like just be open and real with it. And even though I was still talking, I had Christian lingo in my stuff, people out on the outside, they accepted it. When I was in college, they accepted it. When I went to the hood, they accepted it. So it was more so just letting my guards down and giving people my heart.
That's good.
Yeah, I totally agree. I thank God I really haven't encountered anybody being like, yo, like what you said, like it's too churchy or too this. I think because of, like I said, because of my paradigm, like I've always, like, so like the guys that everybody was scared of when I was a kid, I knew them. Like they were eating cereal in my house. So like I didn't see them as somebody to be afraid to. So I think like just doing hip hop, like, well, hip hop in its essence is self-expression. Music in its essence is self-expression. But hip hop specifically, like when you look back at like Tupac's and you look back at Biggie's, like Brenda's Baby, like they're talking about real life situations. And so when I approached my music, I think I never tried to say something. I just said something. So like if I was angry in the moment, then I was gonna talk about how I was angry, and I was gonna talk about why I was angry, and I was just gonna be honest about that. And the goal for me is always by the end of the song, I take you to wherever I am. Whether that means that I still have a question when I'm done with the song, or if I have an answer at the end of the song. I'm just gonna lead you through my journey because real recognizes real. That's what we said as a kid. We've all said that. Real recognizes real. So if I'm just honest, and if my Christianity is real, then I don't have to be a Christian. I'm just a Christian. And so my lyrics will represent that. And I would hope that would be good enough.
That's word. That's good. I like that. What do you think?
I'm not a rapper, man.
Yeah. What do you think about even being an artist? You know, working with Christian hip hop. You know, and some of the things that you do, man, it's hard because like I remember early on, like people telling you like you can't make a living out of that. You know, you can't do that. Like what is that? You know, and so like how you process that?
I mean, I don't. It wasn't too hard for me just because I'm blessed and grateful that I got parents that always supported me and other people around me. And honestly, I've just been the type of person that never really cared what people thought. I just did it. So I mean, I think in general, not just hip hop or musical artists. I think artists in general, people who paint, people who draw. It's a hard topic because sometimes when you're expressing yourself, it can be explicit. Yeah, I remember one time I did a design. It wasn't even that bad, but I remember I did a design where there was girls on the cover, and the girl on the cover was she was wearing a bikini, I think. And the guy told me that he actually lost some friends because of that cover. But he didn't care either because the song was technically like about that situation. What I heard in that, I connected to that song.
Yeah.
Because he was talking about lust and stuff. And I struggled with that at a certain point in my life. And so when I was listening to the song, that cover, whatever came out, it was an interpretation visually. And it's not like I threw on a nude chick showing, her body parts either. Mm-hmm. But I think being an artist in general, it's always going to be something difficult. I think that's why a lot of times when creative people are around each other, they understand each other a lot more than when everybody else is around. Like for me, sometimes, not to hate on anybody or make fun of you, I get along and talk easier with creative people around me just because they understand where I'm coming from. Mm-hmm. And that's why at a certain point, I just did what I did, whether he liked it or not. I'm at peace with it, with God. As long as I know God's cool with what I'm doing. Because if he wasn't, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. So.
That's good, man. So one of the things we talk a lot about is revived generation. We want to see a generation revived, restored, and renewed. And I think there are a lot of people out there, man, they've been ridden by things like shame and abandonment, fear, poverty, fatherlessness, brokenness, things that you guys talk about as artists. And so if there was just one thing you could say to somebody, maybe you're speaking to creative people that feel misunderstood or feel like their gift is not valued, what would you say to those viewers, to that generation? Like, pour your heart out a little bit as a creative to them and say, like, man, this is something that I feel like you need so that you can live as that revived generation.
Honestly, I would say one thing that I always live my life by is fight to be authentically yourself. So when you're creating or when you're living every single day, be who God has created you to be. So if you feel, you have certain gifts or certain talents or certain things that you want to talk about, then you be that person. Don't let other people, you have good people around you who give you advice on your life and what you want to do, but you have to ultimately be who God has called you to be. And if you struggle with not having that relationship with God, or you don't believe, or you don't know, or you have those questions, then I also encourage you to fight to find those answers for yourself. Don't, just be that person that doesn't know, but doesn't really want to try to know, but they're still frustrated at why is life going this way, or why am I frustrated at these problems? Well, then my encouragement is then actually seek an answer. I think in this generation, we like to complain a lot, or are frustrated with certain things, but then we don't want to work to find out well, what's, how can I fix this, or what, how can I get out of this situation? So I encourage, any listener who's, doesn't have that relationship to seek, someone who you can just have a conversation, but ultimately be who God's called you to be.
That's good.
Yeah. I mean, piggyback off that, like, God created you exactly the way that you are for a reason, I always lived by I was always encouraged to go through what I was going through for someone else, And I know a lot of times when we feel misunderstood, or when we feel like we're the only ones going through something, that we feel singled out and, isolated. I would just say, like, you're not the only one. And you stepping out and you being bold and being you is actually going to connect with the other people that feel that exact same way. Yeah.
I think for me, when I think about the idea of a revived generation, I think to be a part of that, you have to know what it means to be revived.
That's right.
And I think oftentimes we as a church, we don't do a good job of describing what that word means. Because like true revival it comes in phases. So like a caterpillar's born, but then the caterpillar has to die to become the butterfly. But it never necessarily died. And I think that what I'm trying to say ultimately is like to be a part of a revived generation that continues to be alive, you have to embrace the brokenness that comes through revival. So like the seasons that get low, the seasons that get difficult, the seasons when your tree doesn't have leaves doesn't mean that the tree is no longer alive.
That's right.
And so I think that's something that God has continued, like that's a big part of my message. He showed me suffering is the servant of glory. So the caterpillar that, has to get in the cocoon and fight to get out, he suffers. He hits the cocoon over and over to get out. But that suffering is what served him up the glory that comes in the next phase. Paul talked about growing from glory to glory. So to talk to the revived generation, my goal is not just to revive them. My goal is to revive them so that they stay alive.